Alrighty, we're holding in the middle of the Gemorah about the hey Avi. We're holding the Gemorah in the middle of page 97a. We're talking about the Ma'aseh Mashiach and the days of Mashiach leading up to Mashiach and the different calculations. Okay, so the Gemorah is going to get. This is a complicated Gemara that's quoted in many places. Complicated not in the understanding, but more in how to put it all together. The Gemara continues. Kihad Rab Zera. So we're holding a middle page, or towards the end of the page of 97a. Kihad Rab Zera. Rab Zera said like this. When he saw people or the rabbis that were preoccupying themselves or engaging in trying to figure out the times of when Mashiach is going to come, the signs of Mashiach, Amalu, he would tell them, B'matusa, I ask of you, B'ana minaychu loy tirachakuhu disonena. He's saying, I'm asking you to please don't delay the coming of Mashiach, because we've learned that Shloishim Boim Behesach Hadas. Hebrews, middle of page 97a on the bottom, 97a on the bottom. That he's saying basically don't preoccupy yourself in the figuring out of the days of the coming of the Mashiach. Why? Because the Mashiach, there are three things that come. Behesach Hadas. Hesach Hadas means when you're not paying attention. Hesach means when it's a void of das of consciousness. Eluhain, and what are the three things that are going to come basically when you're not ready for them? So one of them is a famous Gemara. One of them is Moshiach. Mashiach is going to come when you're not paying attention to the idea. So the more they're talking about it, the more there's a consciousness about Mashiach. So it's going to delay Mashiach. Mitzia, if you're a lost article, it's everyone knows that when you lost something and you're looking for it, it's hard to find it. But when you're not looking for it, all of a sudden, boom, you remind yourself where the Mitzia is, where's this something that's found, and an akra of a scorpion. Again, we're holding the bottom page 97a. So what is the connection between the three? So actually, similarly, he's basically saying just the Rebbe would quote this Gemara many times. What is the idea of the Rebbe asked himself once, why am I talking so much about Mashiach if it's the Gemara says the Mashiach is going to come behesach hadas when there's no paying attention? He asked the question of Reb Zera. He said people have asked that of him. He said hesach hadas also means when you take your limitations of your das, the way you understand Mashiach, when you put it out of your own limitations, so then that helps the bringing of the Mashiach. But in the literal translate of the Gemara is that when you least expect the Mashiach, he's going to come. The Ein Yaakov says that that the connection is like this: that if you're going to be worthy, so then the Mashiach is going to come like a Metzia, like a pleasant thing, right? A Metzia is something pleasant. When you find something is lost, or something that's ownerless, and you could keep it, so then it's a satisfying experience. So like that, if you're Zoich, if we're going to be worthy, Mashiach is going to be a satisfying experience. But the Ben Yaakov says, if we're not going to be worthy, so it's going to come to us like an akrav, like a scorpion. And just like a scorpion is not a pleasant experience, it may come together with the Chevle Mashiach that we learn about. The Chevle Mashiach are the pain births of Mashiach. So here, and Yaakov says the idea of the Chevle Mashiach is kind of a difference if Mashiach is going to be like a Metzia, a pleasant article, or something like an akrav, like a scorpion. So Rashi says, when he would see the rabbis preoccupying themselves and trying to figure out when the Mashiach is coming, he would be disappointed. He would tell them to stop, because by doing that, then we're going to lose the hesach hadas, the spontaneous of it, and the out of the blue kind of it, because Mashiach can only come when we're least expecting it. What is the connection between an akrav, a scorpion? A scorpion bites a person suddenly. So also, when we're least expecting, obviously, is when you get attacked by a scorpion. Again, we're on the bottom page 97. It should be the last page in the art scroll. Omarav Ketina. Okay, this is again those who are following along with me in the Steinsaltz. Again, for some reason, I spoke to the Rabbi Steinsaltz Jr. himself to ask him why, but the last lines of some of the Amudim are missing. So he says like this: Amar Rav Ketina. Rav Ketina said like this: Shis alfei shnei havi alma. This is a famous Gemara. The world will exist 6,000 years. Means anyone we're holding now 5,785. So we're 215 years till the end of days. When people talk about in non-Jewish circles of the apocalypse or doomsday, the fact is the Gemorah says right here in Sanhedrin, the world will exist 6,000 years. So we've already done 5,785 of those. Shisal v'shin havi alma v'chad charuv, and then the 1,000th year after that is going to be a year of destruction, where there's going to be no one. Hey Aaron, there's going to be no life in that time. And he quotes the verse. How do we know? Rabbi Katina quotes a verse. It says, "V'niskav Hashem levad b'yemahu." God is going to be alone, exalted on that day. Alone means there's going to be no other creation. That is area that is going to be with Hashem on that 7,000th year. Abaye says that's not going to be 1,000 years of God alone. What does it mean, God alone? Not that the world is going to be destroyed, that afterwards there's going to start a 7th Shemitah, another cycle. And that's another cycle is going to be the Tchias HaMeisim. That's going to happen later, or another period of time that's going to happen afterwards. Abaye says Tzrei Charuv. That's not going to be 1,000 years of loneliness, so to say, of God, will everything be destroyed? But it's going to be 2,000 years that it's going to in ruins, that the world's going to be in ruins and then rebuilt itself.
And you got about put half of this in the water.
So, like it says, Yichayenu mi'amayim, b'yem hashlishi kimenu v'nichi lefanav. As it says that for 2 days, Yomayim is 2 days, and for God 1,000 years is like a day, is going to be a life for 2 days. And the third day, Yikamenu v'nichi lefanav, we're going to live in His presence. That means after 2,000 years of destruction, is going to come life again. Chad Charev. So Rashi says, She'elef shana yiyah charuv chutz misheishes alafim elu dahainu elef shvi. Means not that in the 6,000 years is going to be destruction, but the end of the 7,000th year, which means again, when in 1991 there was someone who was speaking about a big gadol in Yisrael was speaking about that the Moshiach there could be another 2,000 years till Moshiach comes, and the Rebbe was shouting then, Mamish, this time around Sar B'Tevis, I was there in 770. How could you say that? The Gemorah says that the world is only going to live for 6,000 years. Even Abaye, who argues, just says that there's 2,000 years after that. But everyone agrees that the world's only going to exist 6,000 years, and the 7,000th year is going to be the sabbatical, so to say. Trey and Rabbi says Trey alafim hu cherev elf shviv elf shmini. Similar to, I guess, like a Hakel year or a Jubilee year, that the Jubilee year comes after the Shemitah year. That's also a year that you don't work. So like that, there's going to be like a Jubilee, so to say, where there's going to be 2,000 years that there's going to be destruction, and only afterwards, Yechia Lefanav, we're going to come back to life. So he quotes Yomayim, 2 days. What's 2 days mean in 1,000 years? So Rashi says that a day for God is like 1,000 years. It's a clear verse. Rashi quotes, 1,000 years in God's eyes is like a day. So we have an argument between Abaye and Rav, and how many years is going to be destruction? Is it going to be 2,000 years or 1,000 years? But everyone agrees that there's only 6,000 years of this world as we know it. Again, those who've learned with us in the Kutei Torah, there's many shmitas. There's the Rizal talks about this. We're in the second shmita of the sabbaticals of years. Tanaka Vesed Rav Katina. We've learned to support the opinion of Rav Katina, who says 1,000 years. Like why? Because it says Kishem Shashvis Mishametes Shana Achas L'Sheva Shanim, just like the sabbatical kind of erases all debts once in 7 years. So to the world kind of gets a restart after every 7,000 years. Again, that 1,000 years is like a Shemitah. After 6 comes the 7th year, the sabbatical. So again, according to the Rizal, according to most Kabbalists, we are in the second sabbatical today as we live. Okay, there was a first sabbatical before. That was the world of Chesed. That was the world of Chanoch, the world of Moshe Rabbeinu, Kiminamai Mishisihu. Moshe was taken out of the first sabbatical to be brought into our sabbatical. All right, Shnemer, as he quotes the pasuk, "V'niskav Hashem levad b'yemahu." Again, he quotes the pasuk. Rav Katina says that Hashem is going to be alone on that day, meaning a singular day as opposed to 2 days. V'omer, and it says also as a sabbatical is like idea of Shabbos. It says Mizmashir liyem Shabbos yom shekul Shabbos. It's going to be a day full of Shabbos. Again, we are learning the Talmud in a way of girsa, so to say, not deep, but there's many ideas to explain this idea of the 7,000th year. He quotes now the verse Yom Shekule Shabbos, the concept of Shabbos, which is a positive thing. Obviously, we're not talking about a negative destruction like the movies where there's going to be, fire falling from heaven and everything is going to be destroyed. It's a destruction of kind of the limitations of what we know. When you go out of your limitations, that's a destruction of your mindset. So it's not exactly in the most physical sense as we see it. But if you're just looking at the Gemorah, we're talking about a 7,000th year that's going to be very different than the 6,000 years we are in right now. And it says, Ki elef shanim be'einecha k'yem esmo ki avra. Again, he quotes that 1,000 years to Hashem is like 1 year. And again, the commentaries say, of course, that God is not limited by time. We know that time is part of the creation. Bereshis bar alikim. When Bereshis in the beginning, that was when time was created. The famous teaching of the Maggidim is rich. But even though God is beyond time, right? He's past, present, and future all in the same. But in the concept of time, the way He's created it, there's going to be a time that's beyond this kind of reality of the 6,000 years that we're living in. Meshamet, so he says every 7,000 years, the world is Meshamet v'nasachar, it gets destroyed. Again, destruction has to be taken in perspective. Shekula Shabbos sha'olim Meshamet, just like it's Shabbos, it's going to be a world that everything is going to be kind of erased. Okay, so here we finish in the Steinsaltz. I'm going to read outside the Steinsaltz because there's one more line, unfortunately, that is missing. And he says like this, Tana Devei Eliyahu. They learned in the Yeshiva of Eliyahu. Anyone who has the original text in front of them, it'll be the final line of the Talmud. Tana Devei Eliyahu. We learned in the Yeshiva of Elijah. Sheishes Alafim Shana Havi Alma. Again, 2,000 years, 6,000 years, the world will exist. And now this is a famous Gemorah, and that's why it's very important we learn it. And unfortunately, also he's missing the Rashis that does the calculation. How do we divide these 6,000 years? So we're talking about there's a 6,000 years. The 6,000 years has been divided into 3 periods of time. Shnei alafim tayu is the first 2,000 years of chaos. That's the years from Adam being created. And we all know what happened the first 1,500 years of creation. God brought the flood. So obviously things weren't great. That's chaos. Up until Avram Avinu turned 52. Rashi makes the calculation. Till Avram Avinu did 52 were the 2,000 years of chaos. Shnei alafim Torah. Then there's 2,000 years of Torah. That's from Avram Avinu started Hanefesh Asher Asu B'Charain. He started to change people. That was the seeds for Torah. That went until, the math is, 100 and something, 20-something years after the destruction of the second temple. Means the second temple from Avram until, so to say, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the author of the Mishnah, is the section of 2,000 years of Torah. That was when Torah was at its glory. Now there's arguments about the next statement, how we look at the next statement. And then Shnei Alafim Ma'is Mashiach. The next 2,000 years, which is from 150 years after the destruction of the temple, which would be about 200 in the current era, which means that we're deep into the days of Mashiach. And the Gemara is going to explain what's that mean, the days of Mashiach. It means that that's when Mashiach could come. There's an argument by commentaries. If the Shnei Alafim Mashiach, if the 2,000 years of Mashiach is a downgrade from the 2,000 years of Torah, meaning that Torah goes until 2,000 years, and then after that, after that starts kind of say that the Torah loses its glory. Torah lost its glory from Rabbeinu HaKadosh. That's one opinion. But Rashi seems to learn, and we'll see that inside. Rashi learns that no, that it's not that there's, God forbid, a negative in Torah. First of all, there's been tremendous Torah since Rabbeinu HaKadosh. The Talmud's been published, the commentaries, the Responsa, the Rambam, Maimonides, Chassidus, Kabbalah. So many things have been coming into light. The Shulchan Aruch was all in the 2,000 years of Mashiach. But some people hold that's still not on the level of the 2,000 years of Torah. Rashi says it's an extension, that from that comes the 2,000 years of being able to Mashiach to come, but not that we're not in the years of Torah. I'm sorry for those who don't have the Rashi, but I do want to read it because the Rashi makes the calculation. The Rashi says like this: Beza lafim hayu toyu. The first 2,000 years of creation were chaos. Tachesh le'nitna dain Torah. What defines chaos? The very fact that Torah wasn't given yet is already the definition of chaos. And the world was in a chaotic way. Mi Adam Arishon, from first man, Avram ben Nun Beishan, until Avram Avinu, our father, was 52. What's the significance of the year 52? Because we know Avram at 75. And we start with some opinions say that Avram Avinu, we learned, those who remember the class a few months ago, we learned that Avram Avinu had the vision of the covenant at 70. That's why the Bnei Ephraim miscalculated in leaving Egypt early. But what's the significance of 52? So he says, until Avram was 52, that's 2,000 years. So from Adam until Avram's 52nd birthday is 2,000 years. Like defined in the Neshalmu Alafim Shana Esek Avram B'Torah, that when we finish 2,000 years, Avram started to learn Torah, and that is the verse that says V'sanefesh asher asu b'Charan, that the souls that Avram made in Charan, right? So Avram started. When did Avram start outreach? At 52. So no one should feel it's too late to start outreach. Avram Avinu only started outreach at 52 years old. Is when he started. So he started as a nefesh asu b'Charan, the people that he made in Charan. When we're talking about Bidoy Lairaisa, what does it mean he made them? He'd start to teach them Torah. And the Gemorah in Avodah Zarah says that he was 52 at that time. So he was 52 years old when he started to teach Torah to others. That's when the Alpayim Shan of Torah started. What are the 2,000 years of Torah? So the Rashi makes the calculation. From when Avram started to teach Torah at 52, until the generation, the 2,000 years of Mashiach is 2,000 years. What is the math? 48 years until Yitzchak was born. Shishim Shana Mishnel Yitzchak Achinel Yaakov. An additional 60 years. If anyone wants to take a pen and write down the math, an additional 60 years after Yitzchak was born until Yaakov was born, right? Yaakov was born when Yitzchak was 60. The Torah tells us that clearly. Achinel Yaakov Hari Kufchav Shana and Mishnel Yitzchak Achinel Yaakov Hari Kufchav Shana. We already have 108 years from when Yitzchak was born, from when Yitzchak was born until Yaakov was born is 110 years, 8 years. And Yaakov was 238 years when he came to Mitzrayim, last week's parsha. 210 years the Jewish people were in Egypt. Shamdim Mitzrayim. Hari Tov Mem Ches. Altogether we have 448 years. And from when they left Egypt until they built the first temple in Solomon, fast forward another 480 years. So it's 48 and 480. Like it says, there's a clear verse in Malachim that says when they built a temple. So together we have Taf Kuf, which is 928. V'Taf Yud She'amad Bais Rish, another 410 years the first temple stood. And you have to add another 70 years of the exile of Babylonia. So you have to add that to the 928. And the Taf Chuf Shana Shamad Bais Sheni, and the 420 years the second temple stood. So that gives us altogether Taf Kuf is 900, and Taf Kuf Chav Ches is 928, and Harei Alfaim Paches Kuf Ein Beis. So that gives us 2,000 from Avram's born till the destruction of the second temple is 2,000 years less 172 years. And Rashi says that when did the 2,000 years of Torah complete itself? 172 years after the destruction of the second temple. So he says over here, and Rashi is of the opinion that Torah did not downgrade from the time of the 2,000 years of Torah from Avram. It's just that because we said 2,000 years of chaos, we said 2,000 years of Torah, and 2,000 years of Mashiach started after 2,000 years of Torah, but the Torah continued. But that's the opinion of Rashi. Others say that you can't compare, so to say, the Torah before Rebbe built and it's not anyone who argues, it's the Marsha. The Marsha disagrees with Rashi, and he holds that Torah was not the same Torah after Rebbe authored the Mishnayos. And so what does it mean 2,000 years of Mashiach? So Rashi says, after the 2,000 years of Torah we're into 2,000 years of Torah, according to Rashi, then it's appropriate. The Mashiach shall come, v'tichle hagolas, and the exile should end. V'batal shibud misrael, and the Jewish people should no longer be in exile. Listen to this. 172 years after the destruction started when Mashiach could come. We're now close to 2,000 years later. You have to imagine what that means. The Yemais Mashiach, we're almost at the end of the 2,000-year Yemais Mashiach. And that's why the Gemorah continues. We're going to go to the next page. So we're holding, and the Gemorah already printed was after that time. So the Gemorah says, Ubavneseinu Shirabu. So why hasn't Mashiach come? If the days of Mashiach were only 172 years after the destruction of the temple, and the Talmud was 300 years or 350 years after the destruction of the temple. Because of our sins, it is what it is, so to say. We're still, Mashiach hasn't come yet, even though we've entered the 2,000 years of Mashiach, 172 years after the destruction of the second temple. As Rashi says, because of all our great sins, he didn't come after 2,000, after 4,000 years. And he's still not coming. So now the Gemara is going to try to figure out, so when is he coming? So we know now then that we're in the 2,000 years of Mashiach. And we've passed the 2,000 years of, so to say, we finished we started, according to Rashi and Mashra, the 2,000 years of Torah. We've passed, so to say, that mark into the 2,000 years of Mashiach. So what's the situation? What's the story? The Gemorah in Sanhedrin, the Rebbe always quoted, the Gemorah in Sanhedrin says, at the end, the Gemorah is going to say, Kol Kitzin, that no matter what, we're past all the deadlines. And that was in the times of the Talmud, which is only, 300 years after the story of the destruction of the temple. Amalei Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, said to Rav Yehuda, again, it's an Amoira. So this is already many years after the deadline of 172 years. Achud Rav Salah Chasida. And Rav Yehuda was the brother of Rav Salah Chasida. Doesn't say why the Gemara tells us that piece of information. The world cannot be less than 4,250 years. So he's basically kind of saying that there has to be, Shmoinim v'chamisha means 58 jubilees. 58 jubilees from creation times 50 is 4,250. So I'm not sure if Rabbi Yehuda was in that time, still 4,250 from creation, which means 250 years after the 172 years post-destruction of the temple. It means 250 years into the Yemais Mashiach. And King David, that means the son of David, means Mashiach is going to come in the last jubilee, it means the last 50 years. So he asked Elijah, will he come in the beginning of that jubilee or the end of the jubilee? Says the truth is, I don't know. What exactly this means, we're not clear, but there's the different opinions when it's over or when it's complete or not complete. He says, I don't know. It means is it totally after the 4,250 years? Rav Ashi Amar Hachi Amalei. So there's now an argument even what Elijah told Rav Yehuda. Rav Ashi says this is what Elijah told Rav Yehuda. Ad hacha lei tistichei lei. Until 4,250 years means until 85 jubilees. Don't even anticipate the coming of Mashiach. After that, you can anticipate the coming of Mashiach. So the Rav Ashi holds basically that up to 4,200, again, we're way past any of these deadlines, but up to 4,250 years, you shouldn't even anticipate, even though we say, right? We should wait every day for Mashiach to come. They didn't start saying that. I don't think they started to say that only after 4,250 years. Maybe I'm wrong. So Rashi just does the math for us. What's Shmoin v'chamishi Yevlos? What does it mean? 85 jubilees. Hainu dalad alafim masayim v'chamisha, which is 4,250 years. B'tchilas hayevel achin hu boi b'seifa. So yeah, Rabbi Yehuda asked, when's he coming? I guess from the language of the Gemara, it seems like Rabbi Yehuda was still in that time frame. Is he going to come in the beginning of the 50 years or after? Is it going to be totally completed the 4,250 years before Mashiach comes? So Elijah says he doesn't know. Until the 4,250 years, don't even anticipate Mashiach coming. So Rabashi says he surely will not come before that time. What does this istechale means? You should anticipate it or wait for his coming. Okay, here we're going to have an interesting Gemara. I don't know why Rashi, those who know history, obviously the Romans didn't have had different legions of different countries that fought for them. It wasn't just, not everyone was Roman. Obviously, Rome is just a city. So the countries that they conquered, they had different legions. It seems like there was a Persian legion within the Roman army, although I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Persia was never conquered by the Romans. But either way, let's see. Shalach le Rav Chanan, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Shalach le Rav Chanan bar Tachlifa le Rav Yosef. So Rav Hanan ben bar Tachlifa, the son of Tachlifa, sent to Reb Joseph. Matzasi adam echad, I found a person. Ubiyade migili achas ksuva ashuris ulashna kodesh. That he had a scroll, means he found an old scroll, that was written in Ashuris. Ashuris is the Hebrew letters as we know it, the square letters. The word Ashuris comes from Ashur, means Assyria. Evidently, I have to study it a little more. Evidently, we have Ksav Ivris. According to I think there's a bit of an argument how it works, but Ksav Ivris, the letters up until around the Second Temple was Ksav Ivris. There's an argument how the luchos were. The luchos Ksav Ivris or Ksav Ashuris. If you Google it, you could see Ksav Ivris has more of an ancient look, and the Ksav Ashuris is more square letters that we're familiar with in the Torah today. The Torah once upon a time was written Ksav Ivris, but he already found the Ksav Ashuris, and in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue, indicating by saying that was basically that it was a scroll written by Jews, not written by Romans. First, I told him where'd you get the scroll before I guess he examined what the scroll was, right? Antiques. Everyone's into trying to find antiques. So they found this old scroll. It says, Zumenayinlach, where did you get this from? I was hired in the armies of the Romans. Again, the reason I'm asking, Rashi says, I don't know why Rashi changed it to Persian army. Again, if I'm not mistaken, Rome never conquered Persia. Ubein Ginzei Roimi Matsasia, and he found it in the Geniza. That means it was already a Geniza, a archive in Rome, or in the area that he was around in the Roman army. He found this scroll. Because of law, and what does it say in the scroll? La'acher Abbas alafim umasayim v'tishim ve'echad shana libriase she'olam ha'olam yitoim. Okay, after 4,291 years from the creation of the world, from first man, the world will end. And this is a very interesting Gemorah. Mehem milchames taninim. We don't know what that means. There's different arguments. There will be fights or wars of the sea monsters. That could be the war of the Leviathan, the great fish. Most commentaries believe it means big armies of a navy battle. So armies that are on the ocean, right? Today, these things look like they're shaping up. So big Mechamas Tanim, there'll be great army wars of the navies of countries that live on the sea or by the sea. Mihen, and from there will be a Mechamas Gog and Magog. And after that comes the days of Moshiach. Meaning to say, from this Gemara we learn something that's not usually brought down, that there's wars before the war of the Gog and Magog. That the war of the Taninim, the war of the fish or the sea monsters, right? It's there's no reason why someone writing a Megillah in Rome shouldn't see a great navy ship that carries 100 airplanes on it as a sea monster, right? That wasn't something that they were used to. So they had a great sea monster. There's going to be a war of the nations, and the war of Gog and Magog that's related to Eretz Yisrael is going to have after the war of the nations. That's an important thing to know. And does it only be the new world? It means the sabbatical. Like I said, the sabbatical only happens after the 7,000 years. Again, there's always arguments about even what it says in this paper. They found an old scroll, but we don't even know what the scroll says. So Rav Acha says that it's after 5,000 years. It says that there's going to be not the destruction, but after 5,000 years will be this war of the navies or the sea monsters, and after that will be the war of Gog and Magog. I'm going to bring down the commentaries. Reb Steinsaltz also brings down the commentaries. I should say the Marsha. Again, the Marsha is one of the great commentaries on Agada. I just want to say, people who Aaron's asked before, what's the point of all this studying? What's the bottom line? In this week's Torah, in today's portion, which is Wednesday, for me, Wednesday, the portion starts off that Yaakov says, Agida lachem asher yikra bachir sayamim. The word Agida is from the word Magid, Haggadah. All the secrets of Torah are in Haggadah. So not just the secrets of what's going to happen, but also secrets in Avodas Hashem. You have to be able to find the silver lining of the richness of Yiddishkeit and our relationship with Hashem in these stories, in this Haggadah of the Gemorah. So the Gemorah, so the Marsha says, and he's one of the great commentaries on Haggadah. He and Bechlal in the Talmud, but especially in Haggadah, we have the Haggadahs of the Marsha. So he says, what's this idea of the fish? What's that mean? So he says, Pirush Medubar Mechamas HaMalchios. There's going to be battles of great nations, Shenikru Taninim, and they're called the sea monsters, not the fish themselves, but the great nations. Like, how do we know? Where's the proof? Where's the Marsha bring a proof? We're soon going to learn Shmois, right? The Haftarah of Vayera. It says, Hinini Alecha Pari Melech Mitzrayim Hatanim Agadol. What does the prophet call Paroi, the great empire? Hatanim Agadol, the great alligator, the great sea monster. He also brings the another Gemorah that Shiyu Mechamis Malchias Koidim Mechamis Goy Gemog Bis Moshiach. There's going to be a battle of the nations, a world war, before the war of Gog and Magog. Okay, so let's see Rashi. Rashi says, what is a Ksav Ashuris? Ksav Ashuris is Ksav Shalanu. That's our Hebrew that we know. Ashuris Shibami Ashur. So Rashi says, why is it called Ashuris? Because it came, hold on, Aaron, it came from Assyria, like we learn in the Gemara. Yes, Aaron.
How many wars before and how many years are these wars going to take before? And then if these wars stop, how many years before the Gog-Magog war?
This is part of the mystery. We don't know. Listen, in history, the Jewish people. First of all, the Gemorah said that Sanhedrin was going to be Gog and Magog. We learned that already. So it's not even clear if if it's written what wars they are. It seems like Hashem could choose when these things are going to happen. By tradition, by the Jews, World War I was like in there. That was, I mean, there was no war until World War I, like World War I. I mean, that was, people thought it was the war of the Taninim of the Malchias. But then came World War II, and we're still here. So it's hard to say. When the second Intifada started here in Eretz Yisrael in 2000, I met a great scholar. He was, I don't know, most of you guys here on the class won't remember. Maybe Bruce. He was a shliach years ago in Seattle. His name was Yankee Tauber. He became a great author. I said, Yankee, maybe this is the signs of Moshiach. He said, Mendy, listen, Moshiach is surely going to come. But for World War I and World War II wasn't Moshiach, so, a little scuffle between the Palestinians and the Jews is not. But you see from here, it's not so clear because it's look what happened in the time we're now. There started a war in Europe, and then it came to what we're doing in Eretz Yisrael. So it seems like there's a concept of war between the nations, then there's the war amongst the Jews. Here Rashi says, he has a different girsa. He says the Chayoles shall Parsi Niskarti. Not that he was part of a Roman legion, but he was part of the Persian army. Why? I don't know why Rashi changes that fact and why that's important. Shayisi Gulei Lechem. He was part of one of the armies, and therefore he found that scroll. Maybe it didn't make sense that he should find it in Rome. There's no history in Rome, where there's history in Persia because the Jewish people came up from the first temple there. Taninim is Dagim. Is fish. Rashi learns literally fish. So here Rashi tells us what is the definition of Yemais HaMashiach. Again, there's Rambam, Maimonides, there's a lot of arguments, Ramban, Nachmanides. What does it mean, Yemais HaMashiach? That's the Hagdama that I asked those who wanted to learn from the Rambam before Chelek. So Rashi says the definition of Yemais HaMashiach is the days of Mashiach, Shekila HaShibud, that the slavery, so to say, that we're going to be under the nations is going to cease, i.e. there's going to be a kingdom in Israel. Mashiach is going to come. What does it mean? That after 7,000 years, God's going to rebuild the world. Again, what that means, listen, the Sefer HaTmura says that there's 7 sabbaticals. We're in the second sabbatical. And when we're completed this sabbatical, we'll start the third sabbatical. That's going to be could be a totally different world. Arizal does not agree with that. The Arizal holds that that's it. There's no world after this. We're in the second sabbatical, and everything else is going to be a concept. All right. Ksuva Ashuris Rabbi Steinzelt says this statement is meant to emphasize the additional importance of that which was written. So, I mean, it wasn't just that someone wrote it. As in ancient times, it was customary to write down matters that were transmitted orally only if they were of special significance. The significance is underscored by the fact that it was written in Ashurit, which is more of a a sophisticated language, a way of writing, and Hebrew, that it's in Lashon HaKodesh, which was like the Bible. Okay. What is the war of the sea monsters? So he says, apparently this is the reference between superpowers. So Rabbeinu Steinsaltz takes on the opinion of the Marsha. That's not just a literal fight of fish, or great fish, but of actually of the superpowers, linked to the verse, linked in the verse to sea monsters, like he quotes the Marsha, that says, Hatanim HaGadol is, Pare was called the great serpent. Alternatively, perhaps, is a reference particularly to the great countries that are adjacent to the sea that will engage in a war, in a great naval war. So he quotes the Ramah that he says, the Ramah says it doesn't have to be a naval war. It could be a regular war. But in general, great nations are called great sea monsters. The Ramah says it could be mean that countries like the United States, China, countries that have great navies, which is kind of practical. This is based on the verse, on the day of the Lord, his hand and the great and strong sword shall punish the Leviathan and slant serpent, and the Leviathan, the torturous serpent. There's two types of serpents. Are we talking about people or nations? And they shall be, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Take that to mean what you want, right? The year of the dragon. So take that to mean what the symbol of the dragon is. All right. Tanya, we'll go a little further. Tanya Rab Nosson, Rab Nosson says, Mikra zeh noikev v'yerd at tahim. He quotes a verse. This verse penetrates in the sense until the depth. And what is that verse? He quotes the verse from Habakkuk that says, Ki oid chazon lamoyed v'yafeach leketz v'lo yichazev im yismahama chakiloi ki yavoi lo yacher. What does that verse mean? For the vision is yet for the appointed time, and it declares of the end and does not lie. It means Moshiach is going to come, though it tarry, even though it may take time for Moshiach to come. Wait for it, because it will surely come and will not delay. So don't give up hope. Moshiach is for sure coming. Right? Rashi says that Noiki v'yer that tahayim ma tahayim ein leketz v'seif kach ein adam yechel amad al seif a pasuk zeh. Says it's a complicated pasuk. The idea of mamish, not to give up and to believe. There's no end. It's for sure going to happen. That means there's commentaries we learn that there is a seif. Mashiach is going to come. Okay, now we're going to try to figure out. This is actually a question that we spoke about yesterday in the Shmuz. How do we view the years of the Jewish people's kingdom after basically in the Second Temple? So he says. Al Pinei Tahim. So the Mashal learns to say that what does it mean to the depth is Rome or Edom. That Edom has it's hard to define. The truth is, if you think about it, that we're in the Gullus of Edom. We're in the Gullus of Esav. As Esav, who Edom, right? We learned that just recently. It kind of evolves, right? We started off being destroyed by the Romans, and we went to other nations and other nations and other nations, and there was also the Jewish people in the exile even after the Romans destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, the most of the Jewish people lived for 1,000 years in Babylonia, which was not under Rome. Okay, so it says, some explain this to mean that even if many years has passed and this does not come to pass until the death, in other words, ultimately it will come to pass. That means don't give up hope. Mashiach is coming. Okay, so what does this mean? There's different arguments, but we'll see Rashi's explanation. Mashiach will come not in accordance with the opinion of our rabbis who would interpret the verse for a period and periods and half a period. What's a period? Period is the 400 years of Mitzrayim. 2 periods is 800 years. 2 times 400 years. So that's 1,200 years. And a half a period is 200 years. So it's 1,400 years. Mashiach still didn't come. So therefore he says not like the rabbis, because the Mashiach didn't come after that time. He says, the Rav says, don't look at that Ketz. There's many Ketzes. By the way, the Rambam goes very into the concept of if a person should calculate the days ends of Mashiach. He says you shouldn't. Then he gives his own end. Rashi gives an end. There's many ends, and until this day, I don't know the last Ketz, but the last published Ketz I think was 1944 that I know of. Maybe some people say 1967, but 1944 we know clearly was a Ketz. and we are still sitting here. Ad Idan in 1 period, 2 periods, which is 3 periods together. Plagid and half a period. Idan hagol Mitzrayim. What does a period means? The exile of Mitzrayim. And if in Rashi's counting, the full period means what God told Avram. Hainu Dald Meyos, which is 400. Beis Idan is Ches Meyos, is 1200 together. Hainu Yud Beis Meyos is 1200 years. Plagid is 2 Meyos. Sachakol Elef Adald Meyos is 1400 years. And Moshiach obviously is still not here. He says, Rashi explains that the word period refers to the duration of the exile in Egypt, 400 years. The Ramah explains that this calculation is based on the duration of the enslavement in Egypt, which is a total 210 years, which would make it much shorter. 210 years, and then 400 years is 630 years, and then 105 years. So either way, we're way off the mark. And not like Rab Simlai, who said, he used to say, that you have fed them with the bread of tears and have given them tears to drink with great measure. Shalish is to mean that the duration of the ultimate exile would be 3 times the duration of the period of the exile in Egypt. So 3 times is also, if 200 years is 600 years, if 400 years is 1200 years, either way, these are periods that are not practical today. So Rashi learns, Tashkima Demai Shalish, Kalaimer Hishka Isim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ben Golus Mitzrayim the Golus Babel Shlish Golus Edom Ki Ketz Golus Edom Zeh Yil Seif Gimel Pa'amim Tev Shanim. According to Rab Simlai, the end of the current exile, the exile of Edom, will be after 3 times 400 years and 3 times 70 years. Why 70 years? That's the exile of Babel. Daniel Seif Arba Elef V'arba Meis V'esrim Shana. Kvar Avru Rashi says this time has passed. We're already means how is it possible? Rashi was not past that time. I'm not sure the calculation Rashi is saying. Rashi was definitely not a lot. It was not after 1400 years of the destruction of the temple. Rashi is 1000, 1100 in the current era, and the destruction was 70 years. I think he means from the exile. He says the exile of Edom. Rashi makes a calculation, then he says it passed, but it didn't pass in his time. Edom was, he says 3 times 400 years is 1200 years. 3 times 70 years, which is 1410 years. I'm trusting Rashi's math. Far over, Rashi says it's already passed, and it didn't happen. He quotes his teacher, Rab Shmuel. Just see for a second if the Masha says something. Hold on, guys. I'm not sure Rashi says it passed. Maybe Steinzal say something? Let's go a little further. Rabbi Kiva was a Meshechist. He believed in Rabbi Kiva he believed that Bar Kokhba was Moshiach. You have to remember, Bar Kokhba, we're going to learn, was not that many years after the destruction of the second temple. Rabbi Kiva, and the Gemorah says we shouldn't take on the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, that he learned, he learned the pasuk that says that once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth, to mean that the redemption will transpire soon after the destruction of the temple. And based on that, Rabbi Kiva thought that there was a pasuk that said, Oid achas ma'at, there's going to be a little bit more. And because of that, he thought this is the prophecy of Chagai Navi, the Rashi says. And therefore he thought that right afterwards Mashiach is going to come. And what was his calculation? Who was Mashiach? Bar Kokhba. Bar Kokhba was by the fall of Beitar. That was in the time of the Shema, the Dor HaShema. So Rashi's going to we'll finish here, we're just going to learn Rashi. Rashi makes the calculation. This is the prophecy of Chagai. When the Jewish people went out of the exile bubble of Yivin Bais Hamikdash and they built the second temple, I'm going to give them a little bit of respect. And then I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth. And all the nations are going to come to Jerusalem. That's seemingly what Chagai was saying. Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Kiva thought this meant the days coming of Mashiach, and it's talking about after the destruction of the second temple. That Chagai was prophesying about Mashiach coming after the destruction. This is how we learned. Okay. Let's just see. Basically like this. The Rashi learns that there was only respect for the Jewish people in the beginning of the second temple, and then kind of things weren't so glory for the people, for the Jews in the second temple. Why? The Malchus Yishayna Shel Malchus Chashmonai. I don't know why, because first of all, like I said yesterday in the Shmuz, until the Chashmonaim, the Jewish people were in Gullus. Even though we built the second temple, we built the second temple only with permission of the Persian army of Koresh and Dariavish, right? And so therefore, we were basically subjects of the Persian Medes until the Greeks, till Alexander the Great. When Alexander the Great took over Israel also. He didn't give independence to Israel. When did the Jewish people get any kind of independence in the second temple? Was Malchus Rishon Shel Malchus Chashmonai, only after the story of Chanukah, when the Chashmonaim kicked the Greeks out of Eretz Israel. Is in the Kaim Shivim Shana, and Rashi says that there was only 70 years of the kingdom of the Chashmonaim. Even though the Gemorah says, B'Seder Olam, the Machas Beis Chashmonaim Mea V'Shalish, that the kings of the Chashmonaim were 103 years, not 70 years. So why are we missing 33 years? Umachas Hurdas, and Hurdas was Mea V'Shalish, was 103 years. So he says, Ika Kvaidam Ufa'aram, when was the real kavod and respect for the Chashmonaim kingdom was only the first 70 years. After the 70 years, I think that Mishrabli would be the death of Yaneh HaMelech. After Yaneh HaMelech dies and his sons take over, and Shlomo Tzion HaMelech, things were not so good. That's when Rome came in, etc. That there was no nation kind of invited in, was only 70 years. And also Hurdis, kind of that had a kingdom, was only 52 years of glory, even though he was also over 100 years, because after Herod himself died, and maybe one of his sons, I'm not sure if he was king for 52 years. So after Herod died, and maybe one of his sons, then again, Rome was really involved. By the time Agrippas II, there was very little independence. Umachas ben Kuzvi, and how long was Bar Kokhba? He was known Bar Kuziva. How long was he king? 2 years. He was only 2.5 years was he king in Beitar. I'm not sure how far his kingdom went, but he did mint coins, so he was kind of. He wasn't just a warrior, he wasn't a militia, he was actually a king. And there was no king. So Rashi holds, that Bar Kokhba was a king. He lines him up with the Chashmonaim, Herod, and Bar Kokhba, although he was only a king for 2.5 years. These are just ideas. There's going to be a little bit of good for the Jewish people after the destruction, and after that, it's going to be shaking the heavens and the earth. Mashiach is going to come. He says, Rashi says it doesn't make a difference. We've seen many kingdoms. Mashiach still hasn't come. He caused the Churban the first temple, because Haggai was talking about the first temple. He says there were 70 years of the Chashmonaim, 52 years of Hurdas, and not sure why Herod is considered a Jewish kingdom. He was technically Jewish, but he was Edom. He was Edomi by birth. He was his father was a forced convert by Shimon the Chashmonai, but nevertheless it was a Jewish kingdom. Ben Kuziva was 2.5 years. B'Seder Olam, like it says. Now here's the math that I wanted to get to. Mipul Mishel Aspicianis at Pul Mishel Titus Shteim Esri Shana. That from when Aspasius until Titus was 12 years. Means when their armies came to Eretz Yisrael, we pull Mishal Titus ad Malchus ben Kuzva Yudzayin Shana. So when did Bar Kokhba rebel against after Titus destroyed the temple? Only 17 years later. I thought it was 50 years, but it says here 17 years later. So that's why Rabbi Kiva thought there was a short period of time, and he thought Bar Kokhba was the sign of Mashiach. Malchus ben Kuzva Beis Shnayim Mechza. I'm just going to read Rabbi Steinzatz, and we'll stop here. Although there is a dispute between the commentaries with regard to Rabbi Kiva's interpretation, apparently Rabbi Kiva calculated that the end of days would come to pass soon after the destruction of the temple. Yet once it has, as it says, yet once it is a little while, he therefore supported Bar Kokhba. That's why Rabbi Kiva supported Bar Kokhba, who rose to prominence soon after the destruction, like we said, 17 years after Titus destroyed the temple, and therefore Rabbi Kiva carried his kelim. The famous Gemorah, I'm not sure if we're going to learn it here or somewhere else, but the Gemorah says Rabbi Kiva, here is going to grow out of your palm before Moshiach comes. And obviously, we know that Mashiach, that Rabbi Kiva was the consequence of the years of the Shmad. He was murdered viciously by the Romans after they cracked down on the Jewish people after the rebellion of Bar Kokhba. Let's just do this last piece because the next piece is a new piece. It says, Eila Malchus Rishon Shivim Shana, the first kingdom of the Chashmonaim was 70 years. Malchus Shnia, Herod was 52 years. And Malchus Bakaziva was 2.5 years. All right, everyone. If you have any questions you want to ask, otherwise, I guess all is clear. Laila Tova, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Nice week.
Thank you.